So you think that without breaking those rules, you wouldn't have reached where you have?
I don't know how many of you have been in colleges and hostels. I have jumped the wall. I have missed deadlines. I have sneaked in. I would have not reached anywhere if I didn't break some rules. One of my first interviews was the interview of Sam Manekshaw, who has now been reduced to just a film because most people don't know his history. They've never met him. He's long gone and dead. But I've actually met him on his 90th birthday and heard him tell these amazing stories of his life with Indira Gandhi and various other defense situations.
Covering such high pressure events, can you tell me more about covering the Mumbai 26/11 attacks?
So the Mumbai 26/11 attacks is actually a very big career and personal milestone for me.
Of course.
One is that when you go and report something, never fear the colossalness of that situation. And what could it take? Honestly, that was the second rule. Takes common sense. Don't shove the mic in faces of people like many other journalists did. Don't become the story yourself. Talk to people with empathy. Don't declare their names on television. And number three, I don't think today the journalism that we are seeing is a journalism to be proud of.
Namaskar and welcome to Fem Forward podcast. Today we are joined by Ms. Shelly Chopra, an award-winning journalist and an entrepreneur. As the founder of She the People, Asia's largest digital platform dedicated towards women empowerment, she has given all the She's the greatest blessing. While we've been following her posts since quite a long time now, today let's get to hear from the source herself. So let's welcome Ms. Shelly Chopra. How are you, ma'am?
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. And it's been my dream to interview you someday.
Thank you.
You're my inspiration.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. You know, when I was on the way, I was so nervous because you're such a big personality, but your vibe is so calm and you just make everybody feel so comfortable.
I shall take that as a compliment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, we'll start with your childhood journey in Jalandhar. How, that phase unknowingly prepared you for a career in journalism?
So, I did, I do come from Jalandhar, and actually I come from Kapurthala, which is a small place near Jalandhar, but a lovely, vibrant, princely state with a lot to offer. And if you haven't been there, please go there. But that's not where I lived. I lived most of my life in military camps and bases because my father is in the Air Force and he retired from the armed forces. So for me, life was always get up today, pack your bags, change again, new school, new friends, new homes, new families to interact with. And I think nothing prepares somebody as a moving life does, because you're constantly looking for how do you make a start again, right? That basically allows you to wipe the slate and start again despite having many memories. So I would say that I did grow up with this need to understand that you have to embrace shift and change all the time. And I was very excited by the possibility of doing that. Maybe because we didn't have a choice. We were never told that you have to grow up in one school, one hostel or whatever. So I think I kind of just said, this is the life I love, the life of change. And change has helped me take many decisions in my life. I would easily attribute my ability to take risks to that journey growing up, for sure.
Right. So, ma'am, being the daughter of an Air Force officer, do you also aspire to become one someday?
Oh, that's a great question. My dad would have loved me to become an Air Force officer or even join the aviation world in some way because it's something that he's familiar with. He could have guided me a lot, but, I never had that ambition. I was amply clear at growing up that I wanted to either be on a factory floor or I wanted to do something different where I stood out with a talent that was less available in the world. And so, my choice of journalism came with great difficulty because I had nobody to guide me. There was definitely that one moment when I was like, okay, I'm going to be reading the news to the entire school assembly. And it sounds like I am giving them information they can learn from. And yet it's giving me some sense of being in a position of power,
right,
where I can trigger change. So, yeah.
So did you break any rules?
Oh, I broke so many rules. I'm a rule breaker.
That's why your show is called so?
That's why my show is also called Rule Breaker. Only because I really admire people who break rules. I think it's so easy to exist in a life where we're fitting in constantly, fitting in as entrepreneurs, women, as mothers, as people, as relationships, as marriages, as behaviors, all of that, right? We're constantly saying, this is how it's done. Yeah. This is how you are. This is how you talk. This is how you sit. This is how you become a wife. This is not me at all. I can't understand that if we all have one life, why are we being so prescriptive about it? And I think that really disturbed me. It disturbed me all the way. I was asking myself this question, is this for the first time after 40 years of existence, am I questioning my world? When I was naming my show Rule Breaker. And I don't think so. I think I have always questioned what is around me with a sense of validity and research. I'm not saying I'm questioning things randomly, though, by the way, any kind of question is not a bad question. But I do think that it's very important to break rules and to certainly address why we are doing something only in one single way. I don't get it. I think human instinct is a thing. We should be able to do things differently. And that's how we unravel the idea of what the next generation could be, right? The previous generation did only 4 kinds of jobs. Now, our last 2 generations has done like 4,000 kind of jobs. The next generation could do many other jobs. And similarly, just in friendships and behaviors, why do we follow patterns that our parents set out for us? What is our own discovery? What is our own invention of how we live,
True.
So definitely, breaking rules is up there for me.
Yeah, I love what you just said. So you think that without breaking those rules, you wouldn't have reached where you have?
Oh, absolutely not. I would have not reached anywhere if I didn't break some rules. Yeah. I don't know how many of you have been in colleges and hostels. I have jumped the wall. I have missed deadlines. I have sneaked in. And you know what? Sneaking in meant that I saw my first movie in the cinema hall, or it meant that I actually went and spent time against the wishes of my boss, I remember at one of the channels, to go meet a historian called Eric Hobsbawm. If the world has their way, they'll just get you to do what they want you to do. Right. And I think you so many times want to just jump out, take the leap and run away. One of my first interviews was the interview of Sam Manekshaw, who has now been reduced to just a film because most people don't know his history. They've never met him. He's long gone and dead. But I've actually met him on his 90th birthday and heard him tell these amazing stories of his life with Indira Gandhi and various other defense situations. I truly, truly feel that I went out and did those stories because they broke rules. Women were not covering defense. I wanted to cover defense. Women were not covering hard news like, train derailments and stuff. I wanted to do that. So breaking rules is an absolute yes for me. And I think I break these rules even as a mother, as a person, as a friend. And I break a lot of rules as a wife as well, yeah.
That's wonderful, ma'am. Talking about covering such high-pressure events, can you tell me more about covering the Mumbai 26/11 attacks?
So the Mumbai 26/11 attacks is actually a very big career and personal milestone for me.
Of course.
Being the first, journalist out there and reporting it by accident itself put me into a situation, neither was I prepared for it, nor did I train for it, and certainly not something that I expected would happen to me. So I would say the world around me sort of broke the rules of what was going to be my journey as a journalist for me by putting me in a very, very complex situation as a young reporter. I was about 8 years into my journalism. And I came out with 3 really powerful conclusions. One is that when you go and report something, never fear the colossalness of that situation. I could have been overwhelmed and left that out of either fear or thinking I'm not capable. But I was like, bring it on. What does it take? Let's see, right? And what could it take? Honestly, that was the second rule. Takes common sense. Don't shove the mic in faces of people like many other journalists did. Don't become the story yourself.
Right.
Talk to people with empathy. Don't declare their names on television. Report 2611 as the event or what's going on. And don't bring yourself into it, as the star journalist for no reason. And I was disgusted watching many other journalists do that. And number three was really that there is an audience for true, honest, balanced journalism. I learned this from Nick Dowling from the BBC, a very famous journalist himself, who met me after 3 days at the Bombay Stock Exchange saying, hey, why are you here without your, bomb safety jacket? And I said, this is India. They don't even consider lives as valuable, which is true. They really hardly gave us a bomber jacket. But what he said to me meant the most. He said, I've been watching your reports and you're telling all sides of the story. And, this gentleman was, I don't know, back then 60 years of age and one of the world's best journalists. And all that matters is that you are not putting anybody's lives in jeopardy. I don't think today the journalism that we are seeing is a journalism to be proud of, because everybody's just obsessed with me, this is my story, and this is what I am saying. The poor person in whose story this is just eclipsed, right?
Everything is fabricated.
It's just fabricated. Or if it's not fabricated, it's definitely sensationalized. Or if it's not sensationalized, you've forgotten who your subject is. You're just talking about yourself. 90% of the podcasts that I see have more of the anchor than the subject. And sometimes my producers laugh at me, where are you in your subject stories? And I'm like, I am just so used to putting the story before myself.
Of course.
I just don't see any other way of doing journalism, which is why today, to call what we are seeing journalism itself is a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ma'am, you established such a great career in journalism. What inspired you to start She the People, leaving this behind?
So, I think great careers are just great by the name of the last thing that you did, right? There's a famous saying, you're as good as your last story. And I always look at life like that. I don't think what I'm doing today is something that is, I recognize it's important. I recognize that I'm among the few who are doing these initiatives. But I do believe that you have to, like an onion, peel yourself to move to the next.
Right.
And you move to the next not because you want something new to do. Because the idea of what you're doing will die and something new will emerge, and you should latch on to the next thing if you are wanting to keep going. And I'm a total goer. I'm not going to stop working. I'm the kind of person who has to constantly think of new things that I'm doing to take it to the next level. And She the People, was born with that very hunger to say, where are the women in our world? Back in 2015, there weren't podcasters like you or me who were sitting there and talking to women. Today, 10 years down, I would say She the People is one big reason why that started to happen.
Yes.
Why companies decided to start focusing on women, why the voices and the efforts of She the People went out and changed the way the government looks at Startup India. I mean, She the People was Startup India's #1 partner outside of government partners. Why? Because they recognize that, we have a community of women and we're bringing change ground up for people to know, not the celebrities, but people who are creating moments of celebration by being, entrepreneurs, startup founders, shop owners, boutique owners, interior designers, media personalities, all of that. We never looked at them as people who were worthy of talking about, right?
Right.
And I always say that you inspire by doing. So if you look at doers, who are the biggest doers of our world? Women.
Of course.
They are doing something all the time. So that's how She the People came about, with the need to go out there and tell stories of women. And soon enough, we went from just telling stories to bringing women together to creating platforms for them to have market linkages, government linkages, startup owning, startup linkages, and so on and so forth. And now we've launched a shop. I just think that there's been a very interesting journey from storytelling to go beyond storytelling. And we evolved at every stage of life, yeah.
So, there was this incident when you just scribbled She the People on a tissue paper,
Yes.
I think in 2008.
Yeah.
But you only revisited the idea during your pregnancy.
Yeah.
So, what made you wait this long?
So actually, my pregnancy was not any reason for my coming up with the, to decide to come up with that to set up She the People in 2015, it just so happened that there was a gap. So in 2008, I tend to keep a little notebook or a piece of paper next to my bed at all times. Sometimes it's even a tissue, and it's not kept there out of act of, sort of purpose. It's just there.
It's just there.
Right? Because in the middle of the night, I always think of things, like many of us do, right? So I just feel like if I forget that little piece of poetry that I'm thinking, or about something, there's a word that comes to me, how will I remember it in the morning?
So you just scribble it.
So I just scribble it. And so I scribbled She the People. And I, in the morning, got up like many other things, folded that little piece of paper and put it in, in a bag and forgot about it. And I was at the peak of my journalism career, and I was shifting channels and doing a lot of other things and building many other shows. But 2014, I was already writing my first book. I just happened to be pregnant at that time. And I was like, I want to set up this thing, but I've not yet planned for it. And I just latched onto that wallet. It's one of those things, you go to a party, you carry a bag. And I just carried that bag, and pop came out She the People. I'm like, oh yeah, that project, right? So I just thought any day is a good day to start that. Now that I had already established that I would do a mobile first channel, that I would not set up stuff around television cameras, etc. So I set up She the People as a mobile first, zero studio, zero office organization, with the intent of just going out there and telling amazing stories. We started with one person, and today we are, 550 million views a month.
Of course.
And it's not just a social page, it's not an Instagram handle, it's everything. It's a movement, it's a conversation.
Right.
It's an identity, actually. I always say, I am She the People. It's not just me. Everybody associates with it.
Yeah,
right?
every single girl, I think.
Yeah.
I also read the stories of how a girl from Maharashtra was able to start her own business of selling honey.
Yeah.
She was discouraged from pursuing higher education by her family, and how you supported her.
So, I would say my aim at all times has been to support women with the most important thing they lack, which is spotlight.
Right.
A place of voice. And that was very key in my journey. Rohini, the person you're talking about, really made me feel how women can change the face of their own lives and the story for their children, right? I mean, you inspire today by just being who you are and doing what you need to do. And I'm not saying this is not true for men. I mean, it's definitely true for men, because before women had their own role models, they were thinking, when can I have that guy's position? When can I be as rich as that person? And when can I invent like that guy invents, right? So all of those things mattered. But I think that's why Rohini's story stands out, because she went from being somebody who was rejected by her parents for being overqualified, for being, a master's in administration and arts, to somebody who had to go marry somebody who had barely done their education. Now, I don't blame the parents. This is the story of every Indian woman's life, right? How can you earn more than your husband, be more educated than your husband, and all that jazz? But, she suffered through that initially, and then she said, okay, now that I'm here, how do I change things? That's when she just took onto the internet and decided to come up with, a basic thing like honey, which is easily available in a village. And she built that as a business. So it's just to remind us all that sometimes we can be in very complex situations from which we cannot get out, right? But how do we find a way that while we're not getting out, how do we just break into something that allows us that freedom that we were looking for?
I think believing in yourself, trusting in yourself, and having that courage.
I really think courage is more important than even believing in yourself, because once you have courage and you take risk, you do get to a point where you start believing, okay, this is happening, And it's really important, because people are like, oh, I have self-doubt. I don't think that people who have self-doubt or lack of belief should worry too much about it. They should just be brave.
Right.
Be brave, be you. I think R.H. Sin said this, and it is like my mantra for life.
And I think we must also stop seeking validation from others.
We should first wonder if we are putting ourselves on an extremely high level of benchmark.
Right.
So I think before we get to others, ask yourself, are you saying that you yourself are not good enough in your own eyes because you haven't achieved being the first woman on the moon?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Right. So I think we have to sometimes ask ourselves that why are we constantly questioning our capabilities and wondering, when do I become that? Now, I'm not saying it's not important to achieve or dream or aspire to do more. But even as we do that, it's central to our journeys to know that if we are putting the food on the table by either working in the kitchen or earning, that's a good enough achievement. Don't worry about that. Don't think that it's not an achievement.
Right.
Aspire for whatever you want, but don't think it's not an achievement. So don't have to launch rocket ships to be an achiever. You can certainly find your own calling in your own space and still stand out.
Of course.
Otherwise, why would bakers be bakers today, Baking was something that was totally unsexy behind the doors of the kitchen, and who cared? But people are able to do it.
Right. And ma'am, another interview of yours with Warren Buffett, which also made you realize about the underrepresentation of women in the business segment.
Yeah. So, Warren Buffett, it's funny and ironic, but as a woman, a lot of my decisions for women were taken because men kind of reminded me how unequal the world was, right? Both in a good way and some by just reminding me that, they were so full of themselves. But Warren Buffett was certainly one very important interview for me. So, the journey with the journey that I've had a really good opportunity to constantly be pushed to the edge sometimes when I was under self-doubt. And often these were men who were casually telling me a story. I was like, oh, that's a reason for me to just take this leap. And Warren Buffett was one amazing story. And I don't even think that he knows how much of an impact his last interview with me was. It was my final interview as a broadcast journalist. And it was just the perfect time to exit something because how big can a business journalist interviews get other than Warren Buffett back in the day. So he told me a story which just stays with me, which is how he really changed his life thanks to his family, the women in his family and his daughter. And yet we know nothing about them. We know nothing about his relationship with them. We know very little about who they were. And I'm thinking the most important man of his time in business is actually, his lives are fueled by the women in his life, but no one knows. That just said something to me. And of course, this was simmering in me for many, many years that we don't do enough coverage of women at the workplace. And I am very happy to see that after 10 years of all the hard work that She the People has put out, that many television channels are finally waking up to this. So often television channels come to us at She the People and say, give us these stories and we will project them, or they get us on board as a knowledge partner and so on and so forth. And it's just delightful for me to see this. And I think everything has its time in the sun. But somebody has to always do the hard work for it. So I truly pride our team's work in building She the People, finding these 1.5 million stories that we've done, and constantly breaking new barriers, as well as, I would say, constantly being the voice for women who chose to be silent and speaking their stories out, right? That was important for us.
So back then you mentioned that there were somewhere around 587 interviews that you taken, out of which only 18 were of women.
That's right. So, I always say this because you've got to remind people that women were such a small percentage of women of people who were CEOs, right? We as a world are just conditioned to be a world for men. And we want to change that. It's not a comfortable change. Because obviously when you are going to take somebody else's chair, they're not going to like it.
Of course.
And the total number of chairs, if they're all occupied by men and we want to make a more equal world for good reason, you are likely to see that kind of backlash. So the numbers have been poor and they get poorer by the day. Last check, 235 years before equal pay for equal work for men and women. It just tells you that this is not an easy struggle. People are talking about it. We are doing podcasts. There is more recognition, some more money around campaigns around women. But if somebody genuinely wants to do something, they would take a leap forward. They would just not make this about tokenism. And I think that's what matters. For me at She the People, I've spent many years saying no to people who want to do token efforts for women's safety, token efforts for women's conversations. And I've always said no. If you don't want to do something long term, I'm not going to be your partner.
Of course.
It's critical. Let's say health, for example. So much is going around women's health today, but not very many people, particularly men, understand it. I think I'd like to just say this loud. It is not the job of women to teach you what's wrong with our world. Figure it out by now. We're talking for the last so many years and decades, but you're not listening. If you can't figure out what is wrong with women's health, if you don't know what perimenopause and menopause is, if you don't know what hormonal health is, don't joke about it. Read up.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a subject you need to know, and you're failing at it, terribly so.
Yeah. That brings me to the question of Gayatri.
Yeah.
I think this is what inspired you to start Gayatri.
Absolutely. You know, like I was telling you, I am a bit of a chaser of new ideas, and not because I want to keep myself busy, but because I hear it from the community I work with. And I spend a large amount of time understanding this. So I've spent nearly 4 years on Gayatri, 2 years before it was set up, and 2 years in the journey that we've set up. You know, women's health, preventative health doesn't exist. We pay attention to women if we are wanting to get pregnant, they can't get pregnant, or they have cancer. When other time do we spend on women's health, right? We spend on their bags and shoes and them looking like arm candy, or women sometimes have to be blamed for making these choices, right? They don't spend enough time and money on themselves. They will take 25 days to think about 1,500 rupees on a thing that will improve their health, but they will take 15 seconds to spend 15 lakhs or 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs or, you know, a few thousand rupees on the next best dress. And I don't understand this about women, right? So I think today I am thankful to the She the People community for truly shaking me up and saying, we have nothing on preventive health. We are all dying of tiredness. Nobody's listening to us. Somebody needs to listen and recognize that this requires a real solution. And it is not surgery. It is not hospitalization, because I'm not sick. I'm just tired.
Of course.
Right? And everyone's saying the same thing. They are exhausted, tired, exhausted, tired, tired, exhausted. Pretty much every woman is saying this. So I'm like, why aren't people listening to it? Because for most of the time, men are like, we don't understand. How can this be a problem? I'm like, when you're tired, you go to the gym. You pump in supplements. You get yourself energy drinks and, you know, electrolytes. But when women are tired, you don't have the time to listen.
Yeah.
Who's listening to women? So that's how Gayatri came about. Let's listen to women. They're tired, they're fatigued. Let's find a solution for it. And so we are really India's #1 company that's solving for fundamental preventative needs to get to healthier, happier women.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's the only brand which is making the proteins only for women.
Yeah, so protein is one of our products.
Yeah.
Many other products like our menopause capsule, like, you know, our specifically gummies. You know, and these gummies are not lifestyle gummies. I'm not giving them to you. No glow skin from our gummies, okay? Yeah. I'm just saying you need iron. You're chucking your iron tablets every day because they give you constipation. I'm putting them into a gummy so that you can actually make sure that you eat more iron through this month rather than chucking that thing into the dustbin. So all kinds of strange things, you know, when I got into health, I did put 2 blocks saying, who do we blame for the situation? And both women and men came equally. Because men don't want to learn the problem. Women don't want to recognize that they have the problem.
Right.
And I think the minute we fix this, you know, we started seeing there was a business model emerging in Gayatri. And I'm so proud that, you know, 50,000 people have consumed our products. It is not a small feat, and they see results. You know, I literally do this exercise with my team every day, and I say this to my consumers, which is, don't ask me what I'm putting in my stuff. I'll tell you what I'm not putting. Because I'm not putting the muck that you're getting everywhere. I'm not putting stuff that can screw around with your hormones. I'm not putting things that will interfere with your multiple cycles, whether you choose singular-like food, you choose maternity, you choose menopause. You don't have to do what others do. And think about how simple this question is. Even if they're 2 identical products, Biscuit 1 and Biscuit 2, inside a man's body, it reacts differently. Inside a female body, it reacts differently. Our hormones are different. Our hormone levels are different, you know. So obviously you can have the same thing, but one person will have a different impact of the same thing. So one of the reasons why women need stuff crafted for them is exactly this.
Is exactly this, right, ma'am? And I think awareness is what is lacking in women.
You know, I think even before awareness is willingness.
Willingness.
Right? So even if you're not aware, if you're willing, you'll find a way to become aware.
Right. I think today only I read a post and said that it's only 1 week of the entire month that we are fully active and energetic.
That's right.
And
so 3 to 4 weeks of a month, we get tired and exhausted, irritated. We have mood swings. Well, we're complex characters. What do we say? But you know, nice things are complex. And so please do something about it. Get yourself the right kind of nutrition, preferably Gayatri's Women's First Nutrition, because I genuinely feel that you'll see changes and not be reduced to black dabbas, white powders, random stuff. Just because men are lifting weights, you don't have to lift weights. I lift weights, but I lift the weights that I think are good for my muscular needs. Not, I did a 80-kilo deadlift in the gym today. I don't do 80-kilo deadlifts, okay? I don't want those muscles. But if you're a woman who wants them, then do them. I'm just saying, know a little bit about your world and your body. Is it so important?
yeah. And ma'am, so many people must approach you with their own stories to share on to the people. So how do you decide which one to actually take it out of the world?
So, you know, it's interesting. Ever since we started doing a conversation around health, people are sharing stories even on Gayatri. And I do see that both on She the People and Gayatri, there are important benchmarks for me, right? So let's look at this podcast.
Right.
You reached out to me and I get 1,000 such messages in a month. But when I think about who I'm choosing, I literally am thinking about that person who's going to let's say, who's really wanted this interview. That matters to me, right? I want to be in a place where somebody really wants this interview. And 2, you're building something new and you're not conditioned to be this person who has access to everybody instantly. I like the idea of going out there and finding somebody who probably would use this interview as a springboard to get many more interviews. Right? Because in that sense, I'm kind of being supportive and helpful rather than just being somebody who's showing off her interview here. I'm not showing off. I'm here with, you know, Smriti and having this amazing conversation because I think she really perhaps wants to do the next big thing with her own journey. And so these things matter to me. And I look at this lens when we select stories. I have a stellar team led by Ragini, Tanya, Priya. These are people who've been with us for years. Jandi. You know, all of these people do a very good job of selecting stories. Also because they live those stories, right? So we don't tell stories that we are not all living ourselves. Back in 2015, our first story came out from a team member and everyone just cried. They had no idea these things happen, right? Or they happen, but nobody could have the courage to say that it's happened to them, right? And the number of women who came out to just say how that story was their story, right? I think these things matter. You can't just tell a story because somebody has raised $100 million. Right, okay, you raised $1 million. Great, good for you. Happy that you can build your business and fulfill your dreams. But what's your story, right? Where to draw the line from publicity to actual stories. I don't care about people who have been spending their or their husband's monies to build large followings. It's not my thing, right? The other reason why we go out and fetch certain stories is I am personally an absolute zero fan of people who are building their personality as themselves being somebody's wife. And why? Because I don't see how you get your identity in being somebody's wife.
Yeah, I agree.
If you get out and you try to do one thing on your own, right? However small or insignificant it is, it matters. It is a story of courage because the society expects you to be so-and-so's wife or Mrs. So-and-so. I do not call that a sense of achievement at all.
Right.
You know, to me, it's important that you are your first name and that whatever you do, however insignificant, however less public, but it's yours. That's all matters.
And so, ma'am, when you started She the People, did you get such stereotypical questions like, "Ye bhi koi kaam hoga? How will you
Of
earn
course.
money? How will
Yeah.
you monetize?"
So I didn't get these questions only when I started. It's been 10 years of She the People, and people ask me, "Oh, are you sure that you are happy with the scale that She the People has achieved?" So I asked this gentleman who was having this conversation with me recently. I said, "What do you mean by scale?" I said, "Either you specify monetary scale, reach scale, impact scale, what's your scale?" And this guy didn't have an answer. He said, "No, but scale, are you big enough?" I said, "I'm not big enough. I am massive. I am huge." And I said, "It's not me. I'm talking about my brand. She the People is huge." So he was like, "But how do you say that?" I said, "I simply say that because you stop a woman on the street, whether she's in Bhimtal in Uttarakhand, or she's walking the streets of Salem, or she's celebrating on the streets of Kolkata or Mumbai, she will know She the People.
Right.
And if she knows She the People, my brand is as big as Flipkart or Amazon when it comes to women."
Even bigger.
Okay, she says even bigger. Say it again.
Even bigger.
Even
Much
bigger, right? This is my constituency. They know all these brands and they know which brand matters to them. And that's exactly what I keep saying. The brands that we build are not about how much money we raise or how many people we service. We have to have brands that are sustainable, telling real stories and are relatable. If you're relating to women around the world, that's the brand that matters. And that to me is like the biggest success story of She the People, where every woman turns around and tells me, "I'm She the People." Not me, not Shelly, but she.
Wonderful, ma'am. I specifically asked you this question because I am also getting it a lot. That, what is podcast? It's just a time pass thing and
Yeah.
nobody takes it seriously. And I sometimes wonder, is it because I'm a girl that I'm doing it? Or is it in general that they don't really see this work as something substantial?
So I think there has been a question mark on whether content creation is substantial. And I think the fact that that conversation is happening itself proves that it's hugely substantial, right? People are beginning to question whether content creation is the same thing as selling yogurt on the shelves of the store. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't be buying that yogurt if somebody hadn't told me this story.
Right.
So which world are we living in, right? I think that's problematic to me. There's a beautiful story, and literally just yesterday, a new employee joined us. And I asked her at Gayatri, "Why have you joined us?" So my co-founder tells me she's joined us because she saw her sister consuming Gayatri's products, and she got curious, she read about the company, and then she applied for the job. And I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful connection, right? So I really think that there are lots of naysayers around. Today, you are small, but significant. And your journey to success will add significance as you go. So it is something that people will question.
Right.
They will question at all times. People who are running big banks told me, "But why do you want to tell stories of women? It's so niche." My answer is, if half your country is women, that's not niche in the first place.
Right.
And the problem is not with me, but it's with you, because you don't see them as the other half. But it all comes down and it settles, because some of these men who have these thoughts will have daughters or wives or sisters or granddaughters who will fix them up.
Hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And ma'am, what are the biggest stereotypes about Indian women that your platform has helped to dismantle?
Okay, that's a good question. And it's a very wide spectrum. I'll tell you from now to the past.
Okay.
Right? Present to the past. The current big stereotype we are breaking is about how women's health is considered something when very, very serious things happen to them. I think we're finally talking about the idea of happy women being healthy women and healthy women being happy women, rather than health being about illness or surgeries or sadness or death. So I think we are seeing a lot of good content creation around how women on day one, found certain challenges, but today are breaking out of those because they went after their dreams, but also they recognized that they would only fulfill their dreams if they were healthier, and that they were not listening to people who would push them into believing that, why do you need to check something with the doctor? Kuch ho gaya to. कुछ आ गया तो test में, right? So our inherent behavior at Gayatri is khul ke पूछो. Whatever you have, ask.
Nothing is a taboo.
Nothing is a taboo, right? So that's a big thing for us. But on first day, and one of the early days on Instagram, the post that we put out that broke the internet was a bra hanging in the sunlight, flying with the wind, and said, why do we need to hide our bras when they are just drying in the sun, like any other cloth?
Right.
And it broke the internet. So much so that 90% of that Instagram post traffic came via screenshots in WhatsApp. Because people didn't know who to share on, because Instagram was still very small.
Right.
And they had a lot more people in other places. When we say, oh, she's such a happy woman, just think about it. A happy woman? It's already a term that breaks the stereotype, because women are not supposed to be happy. Our idea of a happy woman is a woman with shopping bags.
Yeah.
All stock images type happy women, there'll be women with shopping bags. Why? It's daft.
Happiness should be good health.
It should be good health. It should just be freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice, of course.
Right? It should be like, I'm happy I'm doing this thing on my own.
Without the fear of judgment of the society.
Yeah.
Like, why should anybody have to tell us how we're supposed to behave?
Behave or just be.
Or just be. Yeah. I also believe, ma'am, one life, you should just break all the rules and make the most of it.
Should.
Yeah.
Absolutely you should. And I think the one piece of advice I always give women is that, please, whatever you do, be aware of your circumstance. Don't do anything that puts you on the street. Because you can bring change with courage. And for courage, you do need a circumstance that allows you to take that courage. So when I decided to leave my first job, I made sure that there was enough kitty in the bank that if I didn't get paid for 3 years, I would still survive.
Right.
Because early days of She the People were going to be tough.
Of course.
Right? And similarly with Gayatri, I went out there. I know that even now there'll be people who really support something like this, and there'll be people who are like, why do women need different nutrition? Because they haven't woken up to the fact that science of women is such a underserved area. Medical research, nutrition research, skin research on women has been so poor that we have just not bothered. Right? Many of you don't know that you are constantly putting skincare on your face that has been tested on a total of 25 women. Top global brands, read the fine print. Okay? I was stunned that the product that's considered the world's bestseller has been tested on 32 people. Gayatri's products have been evaluated now on 10,000 women. I just don't get it. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That it's just, at a baseline, your conversation needs to be one where you're at least testing a product on 100, 500 people, yeah?
Of course.
So just wake up and smell the coffee, smell the protein at Gayatri, yeah.
And ma'am, how did being an Aspen and Stanford Draper Hills fellow change your worldview as a leader?
So I'm a very proud fellow of all the fellowships that I've done. I've been part of the Vital Voices Fellowship. I've been part of the Stanford Draper Hills Fellowship, which is now called the Fisher Family Fellowship. Of course, I'm part of the Aspen Institute as an Aspen Fellow. These fellowships have been very, very important for me, and they brought me very interesting new sets of skills each time. I would say the Vital Voices Fellowship taught me a lot about the sisterhood, connecting with women who could decide faster. You could learn some smart analytics from them and get on to business. My Stanford fellowship was one of real high-level thought leadership, because from Eric Schmidt to Francis Fukuyama, these are names that you Google, and literally Google, because Eric Schmidt is Google. And then, many, many speakers from places like Egypt to Morocco, everybody just sort of came our way to talk about democracy. And me as Shelly was representing democracy. So for me, this whole journey was very powerful. And the Aspen Institute, it's like my latest fellowship. I'm closest to it is because I think it's focused on new ideas for a new world. and I have my best friends from there. So yeah, I could say that there are some really amazing things happening.
Right. That is so inspiring, ma'am. There's so much to learn from you.
You know, I would just say to you and to others, always make efforts to get cross-function learnings. And what that means is that when you get an opportunity to learn while you're on the job, take it up.
Right.
Fellowships are about that.
Right. And ma'am, what does success mean to you?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I'm very hard on myself on what I term success, as most people tell me. But I don't know. I think success to me in a great way means having impact on a large number of people. To me, impact comes as a combination of economic impact, financial growth, reach, and bringing change.
It's like an escapism from the real world, and I get so lost in the post and I feel so nice that yes, you know, we can do it. We don't have to justify ourselves to anybody.
Yeah.
And there are people out there who think in the similar manner, and one day we will live in that world where we're actually seen as equals.
Exactly. One day, but it's important to continue to talk about it.
Right. So ma'am, what's next for platforms like Gayatri and She the People?
So I think She the People is now like a global movement. You know, we are already in 5 languages. Our viewership is going up on every single day. And because we are not just a page, you know, we have a very amazing website called shethepeople.tv. And you can get a lot of amazing content. You get facts, you get data, you get stories, you get some amazing news that's coming to you from around the world. There's a lot also of depth, right? Women in entertainment, beyond just the faces of the celebrities, women in weaving, right? We have a series on eco-warriors, women in the world of ecology and environment. So there are thousands of amazing stories that we've been doing. And to me, it really matters is that these stories are not just powerful, but also told in a way that make connections. So I think Gayatri is on his journey to consolidate the country's women and health story, particularly women in midlife and menopause. I feel women after 30 need something to just bring them together and drive them to a real new plane of understanding of their own bodies. People are always shy when they talk about female bodies, and I just want to take away that shyness. Because once you love your body, you're going to start doing something about it.
Right. Yeah. And also get the women to realize what their body really needs rather than just following the
fad. Yeah. You know, only in India, in fact, I don't even know if it's only in India. I think it's just stupid that the word diet means to not eat.
Yeah.
Around the world, the word diet means to eat and what you eat, right? So it's just things that we need to change. And we need to change them really fast because it's just not appropriate that the most powerful food systems, the most powerful Ayurvedic systems, the most powerful nutrition systems are in India. But we are just bothered about what we throw at our skin. You know, it's just absurd. We are trying to do stuff that around the world is done by people who are white skinned.
Yeah, the Western culture influences a lot.
And so take the good things from the Western culture, but don't do silly things where, you know, finally somebody mentioned that sunscreen is defense. I'm like, wow, wake up and smell the coffee. What were we doing all this while, right? Sunscreen is skincare, but it's not. And I don't need like whitening this thing because, you know, I have a sunshine country and whatever I whiten will go back to being whatever color it was. So just watch what you're doing and just really, truly focus on nutrition. And if you haven't yet heard of Gayatri, go now and figure it out because it's not being built for me. It's being built for you.
Right. Ma'am, what inspired you to write books which explore the themes of freedom, feminism?
So, you know, books, I think, just came as somebody who's a storyteller. I mean, you know, I think journalists are like the most underrated storytellers in one way because they have so many stories. Their experiences are vast. I mean, literally, I could sit down and talk about a story every minute. But I just thought it would be nice to capture some of the stories that, you know, one had seen. And many of my stories, if you see them, they do come from a lens of trying to find out the backstory. whether it is the book called When I Was 25, where I talk about Adi Godrej and his journey being a bellboy, or when I talk about the journey of Dimple Kapadia and, her journey with leprosy. And then there is, of course, the story of Feminist Rani, the book, which is again very, very strong. And I still get so much feedback about it. So many people write to me about how that book means so much to them. I just thought I'll pick very unassuming characters who people don't always consider feminist and just write the book with Meghna, who's my co-author. Feminist Rani used to be a show on She the People. Right. We used to take it around the country. And then we realized that this is a really powerful conversation. We should turn it into a book. And this book has from somebody who's a, who's an activist to somebody who's a, somebody who's sort of been in the hairdressing community or, just a person who has written other books, to all kinds of regular women, basically, right? Or a comedian. We just thought it'd be nice to put together these people and talk about what feminism means to them.
Right.
Yeah. Feminism is not a book that you have to go and borrow from the library.
Of course.
It's just something that you need to imbibe as a way of life. Right. I hate it. I hate it. I can see it again when people say, I'm not that type of feminist. I'm not the feminazi type. I'm not a hardcore feminist. Oh, what's a feminist? Somebody who stands up for women's rights. And so anybody who's a feminist is just a feminist. I don't know what these other terms are. Yeah. I don't understand them. I don't prescribe to them. I don't suggest you do either. I genuinely think we need to change the way women are so apologetic for using the term feminism. It's a shame. It's a celebration, right?
Of course. And I'm talking about sisterhood economy. What's that one truth you want every reader to take from it?
So sisterhood economy is a very sharp, simple, in-your-face book with lots of fun anecdotes from 5,000 women that I had spoken to. Not all of them are there in their name, but many of them are there in their stories. And the single most important anecdote I want anyone to take from that is simply this, that when women get together, they can be more than just an economic powerhouse. And that's what the book tries to do. It's the first time ever the term sisterhood economy was born. And I am very proud of having coined that term for us to reflect on the need for women to seek help, inspiration, support, and opportunity from another woman. And that's literally what it is, right?
Right.
So sisterhood economy kind of stands for the idea that hang around with those women who will speak your name in a room full of opportunities when you're not there.
Women supporting women?
Yeah.
Yeah. And ma'am, who are those people who have influenced you the most in your journey? Influenced, inspired?
Oh God, that's a very hard question. However basic it sounds, but I sometimes do get inspired by just how cutthroat I've been with myself. And it's not to say that I didn't get inspired by 1,000 other people. I have a long list. They're all mentioned in the acknowledgements of my books. But I do think that I have not often given myself enough credit for taking the many leaps at a time when everybody thought that was my end. If you see the acknowledgements in Sisterhood Economy, I talk about a lot of different people and what they've done for me. But in the end, I tell myself, in the acknowledgements, I would like to acknowledge myself.
Of course.
For the fact that I decided to write this book or decided to follow this journey, and I decided to not do the same thing for 30 years because I just wanted to get a slice of doing things on my own. And so I'm very happy where I am. And I'm very thankful for also having made some good choices. My family, how I choose motherhood, what kind of definition of marriage agrees with me. I've made those choices. I'm not thankful for others for coming in my life and allowing me the space for this. No.
No.
They don't allow me this space. I would actually think that when you are making decisions, put a little bit of onus on yourself to make those decisions. Choose better partners. Try to be better parents. Behave better as, supporters. Be women who lift other women up. And I think put more responsibility on yourself for your own actions. That would be my piece.
Lovely, ma'am. I'm just rooting for you right now in my heart.
Thank you.
I'm going to put this as a separate reel.
Okay.
People should listen to this. There's no word as allow for us.
Yeah.
So, and ma'am, finally winning the Ramnath Kovind Award.
So I think, let me just answer this question from the broader lens of awards. So it's true that that I've got many awards and I'm very thankful for them. I'm thankful for the award as the best journalist, the best reporter, very early in my career. These awards don't get very visibilized right now because back then there was no concept of going viral. But also the Gold Play Award, on YouTube and all of that. But I think these awards, while they're great for us to celebrate, they're just a reminder that, you know what, these are responsibilities as well.
Yeah.
You're getting these awards, that means people think that the journey up to now is amazing. But the next step after that is also what matters. But I do love and cherish all the awards that I've got. I do cherish some more because of the amount of time I've spent, and the amount of, I don't know, energy that it has taken off me to eventually reach and be worthy of those awards. So I'm thankful for them. But I do think that would my journey be any different had I not got these awards? I would still do what I'm doing. What could be the biggest award? Being the founder of She the People, being the founder of Gayatri. No bigger award than this.
Yeah.
Right.
Starting such great initiatives.
I mean, what else could validate you?
Of course.
Yeah. So I think those are big awards.
And ma'am, any last piece of advice to the listeners?
Yes, my famous bag, which says that behind every woman is herself. This was the first bag we printed for She the People back in 2015, 2016. It's still the most viral bag for us. Everybody wants this bag. We don't even sell it. We only give it to people. Yeah, behind every woman is herself. There is no bigger message than that.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
It was my favorite conversation so far, and I didn't even realize where the time went.
Thanks.
Thank you for giving such beautiful...
All the best with whatever you're building.
Yeah, Fem Forward. Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right.